The text message that would change everything arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday in late October. Travis Kelce was scrolling through his phone, unable to sleep after the Chiefs' Monday Night Football victory, when a name he hadn't seen in years appeared on his screen. Danny Morrison, his childhood best friend from Cleveland Heights. Trav, I know this is random after all these years, but I saw something today that I can't get out of my head. Call me when you get this. It's about Coach William. Coach Frank William. The name hit Travis like a physical blow, transporting him instantly back to the dusty football fields of his youth in Westlake, Ohio. Frank Williams had been more than just a youth league coach. He'd been the man who taught Travis that football wasn't just about size or speed, but about heart and determination. Travis immediately called Danny, despite the late hour. "Jesus, Trav, you actually called." Danny's voice was thick with emotion. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "Of course I remember you, man. What's this about Coach William?" There was a long pause before Danny continued. "I saw him today, Travis, outside the Walmart on Lorraine Road. He was asking people for money as they came out of the store." Travis felt the world tilt sideways. "What do you mean, asking for money?" "I mean, he's homeless, Trav, 89 years old, sitting on a milk crate with a cardboard sign. I almost didn't recognize him. He's so thin. His clothes were filthy. But when I got closer, I knew it was him. Same voice, same way of calling everyone son." The phone felt heavy in Travis's hand. Frank William, the man who had spent countless evenings after practice teaching Travis proper form, who had driven him home when his parents couldn't pick him up, who had believed in a skinny kid when nobody else did, was living on the streets. "Did you talk to him?" Travis asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I tried. He recognized me, but Trav, he's not all there anymore. He kept asking about his wife, Eleanor, said he was waiting for her to pick him up. Eleanor died 15 years ago." Travis closed his eyes, remembering Mrs. William, the sweet woman who used to bring orange slices and water bottles to every practice, who treated all the boys like her own grandchildren. "Where is he now?" "I convinced him to let me buy him dinner at the McDonald's across the street. He ate like he hadn't had food in days." "Travis, I wanted to do more, but I'm barely making ends meet myself. I'm working 2 jobs just to keep my apartment. But I thought maybe you—" "Give me the address," Travis said, already reaching for his keys. "I'm driving up tonight." "Travis, it's a 6-hour drive." "I don't care. Send me the address." As Travis threw clothes into a bag and headed for his car, his mind raced with memories of Coach William, the man who had taught him that leadership meant lifting others up, who had spent his own money to buy equipment for kids whose families couldn't afford it, who had never missed a single practice in the 3 years Travis played for, even when he was battling pneumonia. The drive from Kansas City to Cleveland Heights felt endless. Travis called his assistant 5 a.m., canceling his morning meetings and telling her to clear his schedule for the next 2 days. He didn't explain why. He wasn't even sure he could put it into words. He arrived at the Walmart parking lot at 8:30 a.m., just as the morning shoppers were beginning to arrive. At first, he didn't see anyone who looked homeless. Then, near the shopping cart return, he spotted a figure that made his heart stop. Frank Williams sat on a small folding chair, wearing a jacket that was 3 sizes too big and holding a piece of cardboard that read, "Veteran, anything helps. God bless." His once powerful frame had shrunk to almost nothing, his face gaunt and weathered. But when he looked up at an approaching customer, Travis saw the same kind eyes that had guided him through his childhood. Travis sat in his car for 10 minutes, trying to process what he was seeing. This was the man who had shaped his understanding of perseverance, who had taught him that character was built in moments when no one was watching, and he was begging for change in a parking lot. Finally, Travis got out of his car and walked slowly toward his former coach. As he got closer, Frank looked up, squinting in the morning sun. "Excuse me, son," Frank said, his voice carrying the same gentle authority Travis remembered. "I don't suppose you could spare $1? I'm trying to get enough for breakfast." Travis knelt down so he was at eye level with the man who had once seemed like a giant to him. "Coach Williams, it's me, Travis Kelce." Frank stared at him for a long moment, confusion clouding his features. Then, slowly, recognition dawned. "Little Travis? My God, son, look at you. You got so big." Frank's eyes filled with tears. "I always knew you'd make something of yourself. I used to tell Eleanor, I said, that Kelce boy has something special." "Coach, what are you doing here? What happened?" Frank's expression shifted. becoming distant and confused. I'm waiting for Eleanor. She's supposed to pick me up after her doctor's appointment, but she's running late. She's always running late. He chuckled softly, lost in a memory from decades past. Travis felt his heart breaking. Coach, where are you staying? Do you have a place to live? Oh, I've got a nice place, Frank said proudly. Real nice. Eleanor fixed it up just how she likes it. We've got a garden in the back where she grows tomatoes. Best tomatoes in the neighborhood. Travis realized that Frank was living in a fantasy, his mind protecting him from the harsh reality of his situation. As they talked, Travis learned fragments of what had happened. Medical bills that had consumed Frank's saving, a house lost to foreclosure, family members who had either died or moved away. Frank had been living in his car until it broke down 3 months ago. And since then, he'd been staying in shelters when they had space, or sleeping outside when they didn't. Coach, I want to help you, Travis said gently. Would you let me buy you breakfast? Maybe we could talk about getting you into a better situation? Frank's face lit up. That's real kind of you, son. Eleanor always said you were a good boy, but I should probably wait here for her. Travis spent the next hour convincing Frank to come with him, finally succeeding when he promised they could come back later to wait for Eleanor. As they walked toward Travis's rental car, Frank stopped suddenly. Travis, he said, lucidity returning to his voice for a moment, I know Eleanor's not coming. I know she's gone, but sometimes it's easier to pretend, you know? Makes the waiting hurt less. That admission broke something inside Travis. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to helping kids, now reduced to living in the shadows of his own memories just to survive each day. Travis drove Frank to a nearby hotel and got him a room, then took him shopping for clothes and basic necessities. As Frank showered and changed into clean clothes, Travis made phone calls to social workers, to veterans service, to housing advocates. He was determined to find a solution, a way to restore dignity to the man who had given him so much. But as Travis was speaking with a caseworker about long-term housing options, Frank emerged from the bathroom with a panicked expression. Where am I? Frank asked, his voice rising with fear. This isn't my house. What did you do with Eleanor? Where is my wife? The lucid moment had passed, and Frank was back in his confused state. But now he was frightened and agitated. He began demanding to be taken back to the parking lot, insisting that Eleanor would be worried if she couldn't find him. Travis realized that his simple plan to help wasn't going to be simple at all. Frank's mental state was more complicated than he'd understood, and every solution seemed to create new problems. As Frank became increasingly upset, threatening to call the police if Travis didn't take him back to where Eleanor could find him, Travis faced the first of many difficult decisions. How do you help someone who doesn't understand they need help? How do you save someone who is living in the only reality that brings them comfort? The man who had once seemed to have all the answers was now completely lost. And Travis was beginning to understand that the solution to Frank Williams's problem would be far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Travis spent the next week in Cleveland, desperately trying to piece together a plan that would work for Frank Williams. The hotel room was temporary at best, and Frank's confusion seemed to worsen each day as he found himself in an unfamiliar environment. This isn't right, Frank kept repeating, pacing the small hotel room. Eleanor doesn't know where I am. She'll think I abandoned. Travis had contacted every social service agency in the area, spoken with geriatric specialists, and even hired a private care coordinator. The consensus was clear. Frank needed specialized memory care. The waiting lists were months long. The costs were staggering. Even with Travis's resources, finding immediate placement in a quality facility seemed impossible. There's another issue, Dr. Sarah Martinez, the geriatrician Travis had consulted, explained during their phone call. Mr. Williams appears to be in the early to moderate stages of dementia, but he hasn't been formally diagnosed. Without a legal guardian or power of attorney, we can't make medical decisions for him, and given his mental state, getting his consent for treatment is complicated. What does that mean exactly? Travis asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. It means that unless he's deemed incompetent by a court, or unless we can locate a family member with legal authority, Mr. Williams has the right to refuse care. And from what you've described, he doesn't believe needs help. Travis felt the walls closing in. Every solution seemed to require legal processes that could take months, and Frank couldn't stay in a hotel indefinitely. Not just because of the cost, but because the unfamiliar environment was clearly causing him stress. That's when Travis made a decision that seemed perfect in its simplicity. He would rent Frank a small apartment, somewhere comfortable and affordable, and hire a part-time caregiver to check on. Frank could maintain his independence while having the support he needed. Travis found a one-bedroom apartment in a senior-friendly complex in Frank's old neighborhood. It was close to the Walmart where Travis had found him, which seemed important for Frank's sense of familiarity. The apartment was clean, safe, and affordable, exactly what Frank needed. When Travis showed Frank the apartment, the elderly man's face lit up with the first genuine smile Travis had seen from him. "This is nice," Frank said, walking through the small living room. "Real nice. Eleanor would love this place. When is she coming to see it?" Travis had learned not to correct Frank's references to his deceased wife. "Soon, coach, soon." They moved Frank in over the weekend. Travis bought furniture, stocked the refrigerator, and arranged for Maria Santo, an experienced elderly care aide, to visit Frank 3 times a week to help with shopping, cleaning, and medication management. Everything seemed to be falling into place. For 2 weeks, the arrangement worked beautifully. Frank settled into a routine. Maria reported that he was eating regularly and taking his blood pressure medication, and Travis began to think he had solved the problem. He flew back to Kansas City, feeling satisfied that he had honored his debt to the man who had shaped his youth. Then Maria called. "Mr. Kelce, we have a situation," she said, her voice tense with worry. "The neighbors are complaining about Mr. William. They're saying he's disturbing them, and the apartment management is getting involved." "What kind of disturbances?" Travis asked, though he was already dreading the answer. "He's been knocking on doors at all hours, asking if they've seen Eleanor. Last night, he called 911 3 times because he thought someone had kidnapped her. This morning, he was found wandering the hallway in his underwear, looking for the bathroom. He thought he was in his house from 40 years ago." Travis closed his eyes. In his eagerness to help, he had underestimated how much Frank's condition had deteriorated. The independence he thought he was preserving was actually dangerous. "The apartment manager called me this morning," Maria continued. "They're giving us a week to resolve the situation, or they're going to evict him. They're sympathetic, but other residents are scared, complaining. They think he's dangerous." Travis booked the next flight to Cleveland. When he arrived at Frank's apartment, he found his former coach sitting at the kitchen table, wearing the same clothes he'd had on 3 days earlier, staring at a photograph of his late wife. "Travis!" Frank said, his face brightening. "Perfect timing. Have you seen Eleanor? She was supposed to be back from the store hours ago, and I'm starting to worry." The apartment was in chaos. Frank had clearly been searching for something. Drawers were open, cushions were off the couch, and there were dishes in the sink that looked like they'd been there for days. The medication organizer Travis had carefully filled was untouched. "Coach, Maria tells me you've been having some trouble with the neighbor," Travis said gently. Frank's expression darkened. "Those people aren't very friendly. I just asked if they'd seen my wife, and they acted like I was some kind of criminal. One woman called the police on me. Can you believe that?" As Travis surveyed the situation, he realized that his simple solution had created a more complex problem. Frank needed more care than part-time visits could provide, but he also couldn't live in a community setting where his behavior might frighten other residents. The apartment manager, Mrs. Chen, was waiting in the hallway when Travis stepped outside to make some phone calls. "Mr. Kelce, I'm sorry, but this isn't working," she said firmly but kindly. "Mr. Williams seems like a lovely man, but he needs more help than we can provide here. We have other elderly residents who are now afraid to leave their apartments." "I understand," Travis said, though he was rapidly running out of options. "Can you give me a few more days to figure something out?" "I'm afraid not. We've already been more patient than our policy allows. He needs to be out by Friday." That gave Travis 3 days to find a solution for a man who needed specialized care but couldn't get into a facility, who couldn't live independently but couldn't live in a community setting, and who didn't understand that he needed help. As Travis sat in his rental car outside the apartment complex, making calls to every memory care facility within 100 miles, he began to understand that his good intentions might not be enough. Frank Williams had fallen through the cracks of a system that wasn't designed to help people like him, people who needed more care than they could afford, but weren't sick enough to qualify for emergency placement. But Travis's biggest problem was yet to come. As he was on the phone with yet another facility that had no opening, a black sedan pulled up beside him. A well-dressed woman in her 50s stepped out and approached his car with a determined expression. "Excuse me," she said, tapping on his window. "Are you Travis Kelce? I'm Linda Williams Patterson. Frank Williams is my father-in-law, and we need to talk." Linda Williams Patterson stood beside Travis's rental car with the confident posture of someone accustomed to getting her way. Her expensive handbag and perfectly styled hair suggested success, but her tight-lipped expression indicated she was not pleased about the current situation. "Mrs. Patterson," Travis said, rolling down his window. "I didn't know Frank had family in the area." "He doesn't," Linda replied curtly. "I live in Columbus. I drove up here as soon as I heard that someone was interfering with Frank's care." Travis felt a chill run down his spine. "Interfering? Mr. Kelce, I appreciate your concern for Frank, but you've created a very complicated situation. May we speak privately?" They walked to a nearby coffee shop, where Linda wasted no time getting to the point. "Frank has been missing for 8 months, she began. "We filed a police report, hired a private investigator, searched everywhere. We assumed he was dead." "You've been looking for him?" Travis asked, confused. "Then why was he living on the streets?" Linda's expression hardened. "Because Frank is stubborn and proud, and he refused our help. When his house was foreclosed 3 years ago, my husband, Frank's son David, offered to move him in with us. Frank refused. We offered to pay for assisted living. He refused. We tried intervention, social work, everything. Frank insisted he was fine and could take care of himself." She pulled out her phone and showed Travis a series of text messages and voicemails. "These are from the last year. Frank calling David at all hours, sometimes lucid, sometimes completely confused, asking for money, then refusing help when we offered it. Finally, the calls stopped coming, and when we went to check on him, his car was gone, and no one had seen him." Travis studied the messages, beginning to understand the complexity of the situation he had walked into. "We've been dealing with Frank's dementia for 5 years, Mr. Kelce. We know it's heartbreaking to see him like this, but you can't just swoop in and solve everything with money. We've tried that. So what's your solution?" Travis asked, defensive. "Leave him on the streets? Our solution," Linda said firmly, "is legal guardian. We've been working with an elder law attorney to have Frank declared incompetent so we can make medical decisions for him. The court hearing is scheduled for next month." Travis felt his stomach drop. "You're trying to take away his rights?" "We're trying to save his life," Linda snapped. "Frank needs memory care, but he won't voluntarily enter a facility. The only way to get him proper treatment is through legal guardianship. It's not what we wanted, but it's necessary. But if you become his guardian, what happens to him?" Linda's expression softened slightly. "There's a memory care facility in Columbus, near our home, that has an opening. It's not cheap, about $8,000 a month, but David and I have been saving for this. Frank would be safe, have proper medical care, and we could visit him regularly." Travis was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Why didn't you tell me any of this when I found him?" "Because we didn't know you'd found him until yesterday. Word gets around in a small community when Travis Kelce shows up. Someone posted on Facebook about seeing you at the Walmart, and someone else mentioned the elderly man you were helping. It didn't take long to put the pieces together." Linda leaned forward, her voice becoming more urgent. "Mr. Kelce, I understand you care about Frank, and I'm grateful that you helped him when he needed it, but you're complicating a legal process that's taken us months to set up. If Frank appears to be living independently and receiving care from outside sources, the court might not grant guardianship. And if they don't grant guardianship, then Frank remains free to make his own decision, which means he'll eventually end up back on the streets. His dementia is progressive, Mr. Kelce. It's only going to get worse." Travis felt trapped. Everything Linda was saying made sense from a legal and practical standpoint, but something about the situation didn't feel right. "Can I ask you something? If you've been looking for Frank for 8 months, how did you find me so quickly?" Linda hesitated for just a moment, long enough for Travis to note it. "Like I said, word travels fast in small community. But you said you live in Columbus. How would you hear about Facebook posts in Cleveland?" Linda's expression tightened. "We've maintained connections here, people who knew Frank, who were watching for him." Travis studied her face, his athlete's instincts telling him she wasn't being completely truthful. "Mrs. Patterson, can I ask what you do for a living?" "I'm a financial advisor. David is an insurance broker." "Why does that matter?" "It doesn't," Travis said, though something was bothering him about her answer. "So what happens now?" "Now, Frank needs to come with us. Today. We'll take him to a temporary care facility until the court hearing, and then hopefully to the permanent facility in Columbus. What if I want to fight the guardian? Linda's demeanor shifted, becoming more aggressive. On what grounds? You barely know Frank's current condition. You've known him for what, 2 weeks? We've been dealing with his decline for years. We know what's best for him. I've known Frank for over 25 years, Travis said quietly. He was one of the most important people in my childhood. That's very touching, Mr. Kelce. But childhood memories don't qualify you to make medical decisions for a man with dementia. Are you a doctor? A social worker? Do you have any training in elder care? Travis had to admit she had a point, but something about Linda's urgency still bothered him. Why the rush? Why can't we work together to figure out what's best for Frank? Because every day we delay, Frank is at risk. What if he wanders away from that apartment? What if he has a medical emergency and there's no one there to help him? What if he hurts himself or someone else? As if summoned by her word, Travis's phone rang. It was Maria, the caregiver. Mr. Kelce, you need to get here right away, Maria said, her voice shaking. Mr. Williams is gone. The apartment is empty, and no one knows where he went. Travis felt his heart stop. What do you mean, gone? I came for my regular visit this morning, and he wasn't here. The door was unlocked, his bed wasn't slept in, and some of his clothes are missing. It looks like he packed a bag and left sometime during the night. Linda was watching Travis's face, and she didn't need to hear the conversation to understand what had happened. This is exactly what we were afraid of, she said quietly. Frank is confused and frightened, and now he's missing again. How long are you going to let this go on before you admit that good intentions aren't enough? As Travis hung up the phone and tried to figure out where Frank might have gone, he realized that his attempt to help had potentially made things worse. Frank was now missing for the second time in a year, and Travis was beginning to understand that love and money might not be enough to solve some problem. But what he didn't know yet was that Frank's disappearance was about to reveal the truth about Linda Williams Patterson, a truth that would change everything Travis thought he understood about the situation. The Cleveland Heights Police Department wasn't taking Frank Williams's disappearance serious. Sir, he's an adult who left voluntarily, Officer Rodriguez explained to Travis for the third time. There's no sign of foul play, no indication he was taken against his will. Adults have the right to leave their homes, even if they have memory issues. But he has dementia, Travis insisted. He's confused and vulnerable. He could be anywhere. We understand your concern, but unless he's been declared legally incompetent, we can't treat this as anything more than a missing person report. We'll keep an eye out for him, but we can't launch a full search. Linda Williams Patterson stood beside Travis at the police station, presenting the perfect image of a concerned daughter-in-law. She had all the right documents, medical records, power of attorney paperwork in progress, and a detailed history of Frank's declining mental state. Officers, this is exactly why we've been pursuing Guardian, she explained. Frank's condition makes him a danger to himself. He's disappeared before, and each time it becomes more difficult to find. Travis felt frustrated and helpless. Every official they spoke to seemed more impressed with Linda's legal documentation than with his genuine concern for Frank's immediate safety. As they left the police station, Travis made a decision. I'm going to look for him myself. Mr. Kelce, you don't understand the situation, Linda said. Frank could be anywhere. He might have taken a bus, hitchhiked, or just started walking. He could be in another state by now. Then I'll search other states, Travis replied firmly. I'm not giving up on him. Linda grabbed his arm as he headed toward his car. Wait, there's something I need to tell you. Something that might help you understand why this situation is so urgent. She looked around nervously, as if checking to see who might be listening. Frank isn't just confused about his wife being alive, she said quietly. He's been hiding money, lots of money. Before his dementia got worse, he withdrew his entire retirement account, nearly $400,000, and converted it to cash. We think he buried it or hid it somewhere, but he can't remember where. Travis stared at her in disbelief. He's been homeless and begging for money, but he has $400,000 hidden somewhere? That's how we know his mental state is worse than it appears. A rational person doesn't hide their life savings and then forget where they put it. But in Frank's mind, he was protecting it from something. We're not sure what. Have you asked him about it? Linda laughed bitterly. Of course we've asked him. Sometimes he denies there's any money. Sometimes he says Eleanor took it to the bank. Sometimes he gets angry and accuses us of trying to steal from him. It's part of his paranoia. Travis felt a chill as he began to understand the real urgency behind Linda's concern for Frank's welfare. If we can't get guardianship, Linda continued, and if Frank dies or becomes completely incapacitated without telling anyone where the money is, it's lost forever. That money could pay for years of proper care for him, or it could pay for years of comfortable retirement for you and your husband, Travis said quietly. Linda's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. That's a terrible thing to say. We're trying to help Frank. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to get control of his money. You don't know what you're talking about, Linda snapped. We've been supporting Frank for years. Do you have any idea how much we've spent on private investigators, legal fees, and temporary care facilities? We've sacrificed our own financial security trying to help him. Travis was about to respond when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something made him answer. Hello? Is this Travis? Travis Kelce? The voice was elderly, shaky, but familiar. Coach? Frank, is that you? Where are you? I'm at a payphone at the bus station downtown. Travis, I need help. There are people following, and I think they want to hurt Eleanor. Travis looked at Linda, who had gone pale. Frank, Eleanor isn't... Listen, can you stay right where you are? I'm coming to get you. I can't stay here. Frank's voice was rising with panic. They might find me. I have to get to the bank. I have to make sure Eleanor's money is safe. What bank, Frank? Which bank? The one where we keep our saving. The one on Main Street. But I can't remember which box. The line went dead. Travis immediately headed for his car, with Linda close behind. You can't just pick him up and take him somewhere, she protested. He needs professional medical evaluation. Right now, he needs to be safe, Travis replied. We can worry about everything else later. As they drove toward downtown Cleveland, Travis called Danny Morrison, his childhood friend who had first spotted Frank. Danny, I need you to meet me at the bus station, Frank called. And he's scared. He mentioned something about a bank on Main Street and a box. Does that mean anything to you? Main Street? There are 3 banks on Main Street, but wait. When we were kids, Frank used to take the team to the First National Bank every year for some kind of financial literacy program. He was friends with one of the managers there. What was the manager's name? I can't remember. But Travis, that bank closed down 10 years ago. The building is still there, but it's empty. Travis felt pieces of a puzzle starting to come together. Danny, meet me at that old bank building and bring a flashlight. When they arrived at the bus station, Frank was nowhere to be found. The security guard remembered seeing an elderly man making phone calls, but said he had left with a younger woman about 20 minutes earlier. What did she look like? Travis asked. Professional-looking, well-dressed. She seemed to know him. He went with her willingly. Travis turned to Linda, who was standing behind him with a strange expression on her face. Where is he, Linda? I don't know what you're talking about. You had someone watching him. You knew he would go to the bus station if he ran away, because that's what he did before. You had someone waiting there to pick him up. Linda's composure finally cracked completely. Frank is sick, Mr. Kelce. He needs professional care, not some celebrity playing hero. Yes, we had someone watching the places he might go. Yes, we picked him up. We're taking him to a secure facility where he can't hurt himself. Where? Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can't interfere with his treatment anymore. You can't kidnap him, Linda. That's illegal. Even if you are family, it's not kidnapping when it's for his own good. The guardianship hearing is next week. Until then, Frank needs to be somewhere secure. Travis realized that Linda had been playing a longer game than he'd understood. She hadn't just found Frank by accident. She'd been waiting for an opportunity to take control of the situation. And now she had Frank, and possibly access to information about where he'd hidden his money. But as Travis stood in the bus station trying to figure out his next move, he received a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Kelce, this is Frank William. I'm safe for now, but I need your help. Meet me at the place where you learned to throw a spiral. Come alone. Trust no one else. Travis stared at the message, his mind racing. Frank was lucid enough to send a text, which meant his moments of clarity were more frequent than Linda had suggested. And the reference to learning to throw a spiral could only mean one place, the old practice field behind Westlake High School, where Frank had spent countless hours teaching Travis the fundamentals of football. But if Frank had escaped from Linda's secure facility, it meant the situation was about to become even more complicated. And Travis was beginning to realize that everything he thought he knew about Frank Williams's family, his money, and his mental state might be part of a carefully constructed lie. The old practice field behind Westlake High School looked exactly as Travis remembered it from his childhood, a patch of worn grass surrounded by rusted chain-link fence with goalposts that leaned slightly to one side. As Travis parked his car in the empty lot, he could almost hear the echoes of Coach Williams's voice calling out instructions during those summer practices 25 years ago. Frank Williams was sitting on the same wooden bench where he used to address the team after practice, but he looked different than he had in days. Alert, focused. The confusion that had clouded his eyes was gone, replaced by the sharp intelligence Travis remembered from his youth. "You came," Frank said as Travis approached. "I wasn't sure you would. Coach, are you okay? Linda said they took you to a secure facility." Frank chuckled, and for a moment he sounded exactly like the man who had coached Travis through his formative years. Linda Williams Patterson is many things. She's not very bright. She assumes that because I sometimes get confused about what year it is, I can't think strategically. Travis sat down beside his old coach, studying his face. "Coach, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. How much of your confusion is real?" Frank was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the field where he had spent decades teaching kids the fundamentals of football and life. "About 60%, he said finally. "The dementia is real, Travis. I have good days and bad days, and the bad days are getting more frequent. But Linda has been exaggerating my condition to speed up the guardianship process." Why would she do that? Frank pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket, the same type of playbook he used to carry during practice. "Because she thinks I'm a confused old man who doesn't understand what's happening around him. She's been planning this for 2 years, ever since she found out about my retirement account. She told me you withdrew $400,000 and hid it somewhere." "I did," Frank nodded, "but not because I was confused, because I knew exactly what Linda and David were planning." Frank opened the notebook, revealing pages of careful handwriting, dates, and documentation. "After Eleanor died, David, my son, started visiting more often. At first, I thought he was just being a good son, checking on his old man. But then Linda started asking questions about my finances, my will, my retirement accounts." Travis looked through the notebook, seeing detailed records of conversations, phone calls, and visits spanning several years. "I may forget what year it is sometimes, but I spent 40 years as a coach, Travis. I know how to read people. I know when someone is running a play on me." "So you withdrew the money to protect it?" "I withdrew it because I overheard a phone conversation between Linda and someone she called the financial advisor. They were discussing something called elder financial abuse and how to avoid getting caught doing it. That's when I realized that their concern for my well-being was really concern for my bank account." Frank turned to a specific page in the notebook. "Here's what I learned. If they get guardianship, they can control all my assets. They can move me to the cheapest facility they can find and pocket the difference. They can sell my house, my car, everything, and use the money for themselves, all under the guise of managing my care." Travis felt pieces clicking into place. "So you became homeless to avoid them?" "I became homeless because I refused to be their victim," Frank said firmly. "When they started the guardianship process, I knew I had to disappear until I could figure out how to stop them. I've been living rough, but I've been documenting everything they've done, every lie they've told." Frank flipped to another page in his notebook. "Did you know that Linda told the court I've been missing for 8 months? The truth is, I've been calling David regularly. I have phone records proving it. But each time I called, Linda would coach him on how to respond, how to make me sound more confused and helpless than I actually am. This is incredible. But why didn't you go to the police?" Frank's expression darkened. "Because Linda's brother-in-law works for the county prosecutor's office, and her financial advisor friend has connections throughout the system. Travis, elder abuse is more common than you think, and the people who do it are very good at making themselves look like concerned family members." Travis felt the weight of the conspiracy Frank was describing. "So, what's your plan? You can't stay hidden forever." "You're right. The guardianship hearing is in 3 days. If I don't appear in court to contest, they win by default. But if I do appear, They'll claim I'm having a lucid interval and that my confusion will return. So, how do we beat them? Frank smiled. The first genuine smile Travis had seen from him since their reunion. We don't beat them, Travis. You beat them. With this, Frank handed Travis a key. Safety Deposit Box 247 at First National Bank on Euclid Avenue. Everything is in there. The money, yes, but also copies of all my documentation, recorded phone conversation, financial records proving their fraud, everything needed to destroy their case. Travis stared at the key. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're the only person I trust completely. Because you found me when I was lost and helped me without asking for anything in return. And because you're the closest thing to a son I have left. David chose money over family. You chose family over everything else. Coach, if you've been this aware, why did you seem so confused when I first found you? Frank looked embarrassed. Because I was exhausted, malnourished, and genuinely confused about something. Living on the streets for months took a toll. But also because I thought you might be working with Linda. When she showed up so quickly after you found me, I thought it was a setup. You tested me, Travis realized. The text message about meeting where I learned to throw a spiral. Exactly. When you came alone, I knew you were genuine. Travis looked at the key, understanding what Frank was asking. What do you want me to do? Tomorrow, you go to the bank. You get the evidence. You take it to the state attorney general's office, not local police. Then you make sure I get to that hearing on Friday, and we end this. And after that, Frank was quiet. After that, I'll need help. The dementia is real and getting worse, but I want to choose how I'm cared for, and I want to choose who benefits from my estate, not have those choices stolen from me. The next morning, Travis walked into the Ohio Attorney General's office with evidence that would ultimately lead to Linda Williams Patterson's arrest in an elder abuse conspiracy spanning multiple counties. The guardianship hearing was postponed when Linda was arrested the day before it was scheduled. Frank Williams, with Travis's help, entered a voluntary care arrangement that preserved his dignity while providing proper medical support. 3 months later, Frank was living in a comfortable assisted living facility he had chosen himself. His lucid moments were becoming less frequent, but when Travis visited, they still talked about football, life, and the lessons that matter most. You know what I'm proudest of? Frank asked during one of their last coherent conversations. What's that, Coach? All those years ago, I taught you how to throw a spiral, but you taught yourself how to be a man who shows up when it matters. That's worth more than any touchdown you've ever scored. Frank Williams passed away peacefully 18 months later, with Travis holding his hand. The $400,000 he had protected was donated to create the Williams Foundation, providing legal advocacy for elderly victims of financial abuse. The foundation's first case was a 79-year-old veteran whose family had stolen his disability benefit. The story made national news when the lawyer representing him mentioned being inspired by an NFL player who fought the system to save his child coach. Some victories, Travis learned, create ripples that extend far beyond the original game, and some coaches keep teaching long after the final whistle has blown.